Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's England Football Learning webinar. We are absolutely delighted that you have joined us this evening. Tonight's webinar, we will be exploring how we might link training plans to match days to support player development. My name is Conal. I'll be your host this evening, and I'm joined by a fantastic panel of guests. So, as always, with our webinars, we will be discussing three themes across the course of the next 90 minutes. The first theme we'll be looking at is why and how we might link training to match day. Our second thing will be looking at bringing the 3 R's to life within your practice design. That's repetition, realism, and relevance. And then our final thing will explore how we might build a game plan based on our session objectives. We're just looking at why and how we might link training to match day.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's considering the environment that you're going to be creating. What is the training environment? So is it about the player development, individual player development? Is it about team development, unit development? Or is it about performing, learning how to perform? Or is it learning how to actually go out and win games? So winning versus performance versus development.
Just adding on to what Lisa said, I always believe that the training is for us as coaches to create a positive environment. We mainly can control that environment as well as coaches when it comes to a training day. When it comes to matches, it's a little bit different, especially when it comes to grassroots games as well. It's an environment that you can semi-control, but then there's obviously other factors that come in play when it comes to a match day.
Yeah, I mean, training obviously from a player's perspective is to go out there and practice, right? So they need as much opportunity as possible to get as much repetition as possible. So us as coaches need to make sure that our training sessions are obviously matched up to that, to give them the opportunity to express themselves. Learning from mistakes is key. So allowing them to make mistakes to be able to continue. Match day, again, is again trying to piece the part of practicing training. Can you get, whether it's, small-sided games, whether it's sort of 4v4s or 9v9s, 11v11s, it's just making sure that the players are connected in a way that they can, play as a team. So really individually, I'm saying, master your skill. And then obviously, then can you put it together in a game, but being able to express yourself. So like Lisa mentioned, creating that right environment so that people are relaxed enough to be able to do that.
I thought we wanted to introduce to you as learners on the call tonight. Sometimes as coaches, we can be quite guilty of looking at match day as the big shiny thing that happens at the end of the week. And we often can be guilty of maybe treating it as a disconnected part of our week. So we focus on the planning around training and all the effort we put into planning training without maybe considering how it links to a match day. But in reality, we can actually start to look at match day as an extension of the training week. And I actually saw someone, a learner on the call tonight, say this in the chat box, which is brilliant to see that you're already thinking about this sort of stuff. But by viewing match day as an extension of the training week, it's an opportunity for us to create a real continued learning environment and be able to build in consistent learning opportunities for players throughout the week. To start tonight, we're going to look at these 4 main areas of how we might link training to match day. So they are considering how you might want to play, reflecting on what your coach behaviors are and perhaps how they differ between training and match day and why, what you might do before the match to connect back into the key messages from the training week, and how you might bring that match day feel to training. As Danny quite rightly said, we training is the part of the week that we've got quite a lot of control over. So how can we start to bring that match day feeling to training?
I'm a big believer when it comes to match day. I'd like to observe elements of training that I've maybe put in place on Thursday. And that comes from, if there's a theme to a topic that we've worked on, is for me as a coach to have that understanding, but also that willingness to try to observe what we've learned and can I observe it in a match day.
So player capabilities link into what your playing style is, link into what your coaching philosophy is, link into what your club philosophy is, and also your playing philosophy. So what is it from the player? What attributes does the player need to have in a specific position on the pitch? So 11 positions, what is it that they actually need to be able to do? And then, we could talk about this across all positions on the pitch, but just being really clear on finishing as well, because we might see a player missing an opportunity at scoring and the whole crowd are going, how have they missed that? But actually, how much exposure have they had to finishing to actually gain the practice? And then it's not just the continued learning environment, it's in the practice training environment that they've had the opportunity to get more time, more repetition, more opportunity at making the decision to try and finish.
Yeah, so the coaches that my grassroots team are not reactive because we've got a philosophy and we've got training plans and we've got a coaching curriculum that we do throughout this season. So if they're letting goals from corners, that's not something that we're going to be working on till February, March, for instance. So it's up to the coaches in terms of, I think Lisa mentioned it, in what environment that you're in. If you're in a development environment, it shouldn't be reactive. For me personally, it should be something that that you'd be planning to help and support your players. But if you are coaching at a Saturday Step 2 side, I suppose it all matters on the following game. So it's something that you are going to be reactive with. So our reactive training plans be to what happens in games. I think it's down to the environment that you're in. I always see the season as a long season. So why be reactive the following week? Now, if mistakes are being made and it's mistakes that can be rectified and supported by the coach, by all means, there'll be opportunities to do it. But if you're just being driven by the results, I think that will be a detriment onto the players' learning.
When I'm talking, I don't like to sort of just generalise across the whole game. I talk in my own experiences space, which is more the PDP, so that'd be plus 18. I like to talk about sparring partners. So if our attacking game plan is to do X, Y, and Z, we need to make sure that the players playing against them are at full tilt. Otherwise, it's not going to look right when it comes to the match day when the opposition are trying to beat us. So just for instance, that might be an example of that. I mean, I suppose initially when I first come into the space of coaching from being a player, I was a quite high energetic player, quite vocal, captained quite a lot of teams. So, you know, for me as a coach, I'm on the sidelines and I'm thinking I expect the players to be able to do what I did. So therefore I'd get frustrated. And all I'm worried about is that they haven't passed it, they haven't turned, they haven't controlled it, they haven't dribbled. And before you know it, I'm trying to play the game for them. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm emotionally hijacked. I'm not even concentrating on the team as being the main figure or being the leader of that day because I'm not coming with consistent messages. All I'm doing is heading and kicking every single ball that's gone on in the game. So I talk about the emotional hijack of, can you challenge yourself to actually be on the sidelines and be present? And how am I going to help them to overcome the challenges that are put in front of them if they don't see it? Because when you're outside looking in, it's a lot easier to see. When you're inside looking out, sometimes it's quite hard. Tip-wise would just be, if you've got certain coaches, you may have a coaching team of 2 or 3. If it's just you on your own, I would just simply say, watch the game. You've got, if it's grassroots football, you've got, 3 quarters in between where you've got breaks. Try and make more of an impression during the breaks and set challenges, clear challenges. It may be after the first quarter, it might be just, let's go after this one thing. The second quarter, challenge the players, let's go after this. But obviously, if you link it back to your training, during the week, you would have practiced these things anyway. So it's kind of like gentle, subtle reminders instead of being this rant on the side where they're not doing something right.
So just having a really clear and concise detail of what you're actually giving to the players. What's the information? How do you want the message to land? What have you practiced previously to get them to understand what it is that you're actually speaking about? But also having a bit of social time as well. We're talking about under 13 girls here, so maybe give them a bit of social time, a bit of practical time, listening time, and then almost breaking the session down into those kind of areas.
The key messages that I've always used when it comes to match days and the tools that I use, I think tactic boards are really key and really useful, especially with the younger players that I work with in the grassroots. Just having those learning objectives that are on the tactic board and taking that particular tactic board, don't wipe the messages away, keep the session that you've got as well, and take it away with you on the match day. So it doesn't have to be repeated audibly because you've got some players within your group that would like to see it visually. The use of modern day technology like WhatsApp, especially when it comes to parents, take a picture of the tactic board, send it to your parents so they've got an understanding of what you've done on the training day and how that might link to the match day as well, and also for the players to have a look at it and observe it. What I really enjoy doing is the club that I run, we are on a full-size 3G and there's 6 teams that are training at the same time. So we don't get that much space. So how can I take advantage of that when it comes to a match day? So we're usually privileged enough. I know like the weather's pretty bad at the moment, but privileged enough to have at least half a pitch to do practices with when it comes to training on a match day. And the top tip that I'll give our coaches is whatever you delivered on the training day, can you use that element of it or 10, 15 minutes of it during the match day warm-up? So they get a second bite of it. They get to do it on a different environment. Usually we train on 3G, but we play on grass. So they get opportunity to practice this on grass. But they get a bigger size pitch and the dimensions are exactly what they need on a match day, where they can transfer whatever they've done on training onto a match day. One thing that I've always done with the players that I've worked with, if the players are not starting and they're my game changers that are coming on, can they be the new pundits, as I call them, and have all the analysis on the sidelines? And how they do that is by using the tactic board. So I'll give you an example. We worked on a 2-player call move, say wall passes on a Thursday and with a match day on a Saturday. If my game changers on the sideline, can they do a challenge chart for me? How many times were we able to do those wall passes in the game, and actually feed back that information as well to their teammates? Like we play in quarters and sometimes we have halves. And I think that's a really good way as well to supporting players that are not starting.
Yeah, I think I alluded it to earlier on in the conversation around sparring partners. So if you, I don't like to use the frame of best players, but if you've got a really strong centre forward, you've got a really strong centre back, pair them up in training. Pair them up in training, whether it's 1v1 duels, whether it's working forwards v defence, whether it's working team v team. So they're going to be able to stretch each other to the maximum. Every session I do, whether it's a race, whether it's a football drill, whether it's a game, keep score. There's no point doing practices and you say, let's just play and it's 10 passes a goal, for instance, and they score their 10 passes and it's got no meaning to it. Keep score, keep it competitive. And I know you might say, it's just about having fun and turning up. And we're talking about different levels here, like I spoke about before. From my understanding, in professional environment, score is important because it helps drive standards. So if you want to drive standards with the younger players, just put a competitive edge. Your biggest challenge is making sure that you're matching up the right pairings and you're matching up the right teams. No point having one strong team, one weaker team. You make sure that it's well balanced across the board and there's equal duels going on 1v1. In respect of keeping time, I like to work in blocks depending on what type of session I'm going after. Certainly if I'm doing out of possession practice and I'm going after a high press, we're going to win the ball back quickly to go and attack. If you've got 20 minutes in a practice and you're doing that for 20 minutes straight through, you're probably going to start off strong in the first sort of 5 minutes and you're probably going to, peter out and the players are going to get tired. So just think about working in clever, working smart in blocks of, depending on age and stage, it could be 2-minute blocks. Coming in 2-minute blocks, let's get after it. Let's go and press the ball. Let's go and win it back. And the older they are, you might want to increase that. You might get it to 5 minutes, for instance, to be able to do that. So just keeping track on time, making sure that you're working with an understanding and a relevance as to why I'm stopping it after 3 minutes and having a discussion, or why I'm letting it play for 10 minutes because I just want more of a flow to the practice.
I think it's just being clear on who has what role. So who has what role in training, link that to the match day, who has what role on a match day. So we've already mentioned around the individual targets and challenges. Just to go a little bit further, what's your co-coach role? What's their role within the match day and what's their role within the training session? What's the impact player roles? What's the team role? What's the unit role? What's the individual player role? What's the parent role? What's the player care role? What's your whole multidisciplinary team's role? So your MDT are all on the same page. Everyone's on the same page on a match day as they are in a training session.
So that's theme 1 done. We will move on now to theme 2. There's been lots of questions in the chat tonight asking for some practical session management tips and session design tips, and hopefully we'll be able to bring these to life across this next theme. Those of you who've been on a few of our recent webinars, these have been something we've discussed. But for those of you who haven't, the 3 R's of repetition, realism, and relevance. And these are 3 things that we can dial up or dial down based on the practices that we design. And they'll give players different returns depending on how the practice is designed. To start off with, at a real top level description, football is an invasion game. And if we want to design practices that are realistic, then our practices should reflect the key principles of invasion games. So that's directional. So we've got somewhere to attack and somewhere to defend. There's an opposition, so there's someone to compete against. There's a time limit, because as we've discussed, time will affect how players play. Players will play differently if there's 70 minutes left versus 5 minutes left. And then a scoring system as well, so a way to add scores or to add rewards. Some of you on the call will have seen this before, especially if you've been on previous webinars or indeed on our coaching qualifications pathway. For those of you that haven't seen this before, please don't worry. It looks quite big and scary to start off with. This is the practice spectrum. So every single practice you design and deliver within your training sessions will fall somewhere on this spectrum. So even if you don't refer to them as unopposed practices with interference or overloaded practices, every practice you deliver will fall somewhere on this scale. And the reason that's important to understand is that different practice types will give us different returns for players. And what we can start to do is, if we have an understanding of what those returns are, is be really intentional with the type of practice we design and which players we put in those practices. I think what's something that's important for learners to take away from this tonight is the practice spectrum is a little bit of a balancing act. And what it comes down to is you as coaches understanding where your players are at and what they need. Certain individuals might need at points in the week higher technical practice, or you might do more unopposed type stuff. Whereas you might have players, like Lisa said, who maybe disengage with that sort of stuff and might need further stretch and challenge. So I guess if you can start to look at the practice spectrum as a bit of a menu or a diet of practices that you can deliver based on your players' needs, that might be a helpful way to look at it.
Yeah, just in respect of designing practices for specific needs for the individuals. I'll use an example of free midfield players. So I'm coaching a session for creative play through the midfield. Our team are in white, the opposition are in red. I'd put 3 yellow bibs on my free midfield players. From an observational perspective as a coach, I can easily identify where they're going. I want them to work off of different lines, different passing patterns, but having a balance of also being mindful of having a bit of security behind the ball. So I'll design the session specific around their needs, which might look like a basic game, but it's mainly focused on my midfield players, like I said to you. So our team are in white in general. So the defenders, the forwards are in white, but the free midfield players will be in yellow and the opposition will be in red. And like I said, that just helps me track their movements in respect of what I want from them when they're receiving, getting on the half turn, how they can link to try and play through, how they can combine, out of possession that they're not too far spread apart so that we can penetrate and play through. So that might just be sort of like supporting individuals, even as a collective. I could work on that. My challenge might be can they stay on the ball? So when they're receiving with their back to goal, rather than just me looking generalised on a pitch for where all the whites are, who can do that at the midfield players, I've got a specific eye on those 3 players to be able to do that. Individual challenges and reward, again, might be a midfield player who I want to improve their scanning abilities. So if I put the pitch into 3 sections and I say to those 3 midfield players that when the ball goes into the middle zone, you can't pass back. So they've got a problem. Straight away, they know already that they need to know what pressure's coming from behind. They need to pull away from the ball beforehand to stop so they've got some space to move into. And also they know that the free pass back is not on. So staying on the ball and dealing with pressure might be really, really useful. So therefore, the use of their arms and where they put the ball to protect it is vitally important. Yeah, I mean, the purpose again for me running the whole session, certainly with grassroots players, I'm not I coach them that much, would be just get them into a game situation straight away. It's directional, keep score, there's goals. That's the big part of the game where you're just playing within the game. Within that practice, I'll go back to midfielders again. I'm working in the game situation. I'm working on my 3 midfield players, being able to receive with back to goal, being able to combine, being able to play through balls over, around, or beyond. Now I'm bringing it to the part. The part will be I'm going after a midfield type practice, working with those support players and the specific players during the practice. So the numbers would come down. I'd work with the midfield 3. I may work with a forward player as a target player, and I might work with 2 support players behind. So there'd be a real specific focus on the small part of the game and then being able to draw back out and going back into the hole and then working on that small part that we've tried to encourage the players to do.
Yeah, I love the carousel, especially I think doing the warm-up. but then having 3 stations for the girls to go in, and you can be really clever with it. You can group them in friendship groups, you can group them in ability, and you can group them in in what positions that they play. And you could do a passing practice, you could do a shooting practice, and you could do dribbling practice. And after every 10 minutes, they have a go at doing each of those, and they just rotate. And then what every kid wants at the end is having a game, and we could just finish off with a game. So the positives, I think, when it comes to carousels is that you can work with smaller groups. You can really elm in their technique in decision-making. It's an opportunity to have some of these little stations to be opposed. Some of them could be unopposed. Some of it could be matched up. Some of it could have a bit of interference. And what I find when it comes to carousels, because they're smaller groups, is that you get loads of repetitions. But on the caveat to that, it can look really chaotic on the side. But again, I talked about what do you value as a coach, and the number of coaches that are available. So this is all fine if you've got 2 or 3 coaches that can help you. But if you're on your own, this could be really difficult. But it's just an example, Conal, that these coaches can use to help and support them in their sessions.
This will come back again to what your individual player needs are. The scaffolding might work for some players, but for others, it might be the other 2 structures that might work, or it might work because of the space and the size of the area that you have, or as Danny just alluded to there, how many staff you might have on the pitch with you at any one time. So the focus might be on the scaffolding approach. What is the topic? What are your outcomes? And then being really clear on what your progressions are. The warm-up might be an arrival activity linking to whatever your topic is. The technique linking to the individual and or the topic. And I'm going to reference back again to the player engagement. So the technique time, what are your timings for that? What is your specific technical detail for that? What is the purpose, the area of the pitch, etc., what I alluded to earlier. Small-sided game, in what area of the pitch? So again, I'll allude back to the pitch geography, purpose of the numbers, purpose of the topic, purpose of the numbers, game within a game, and then your timings within this as well, because then you're going to start to get your physical, social, psychological, and social returns in this small-sided game as well, and then going into the big game for the continued learning process. So just break out into maybe 3v3s, 4v4s, 2v2s, even areas of 1v1 as well, all work into the same topic. And then in the small-sided game, just put different conditions on in there. So it might be, can we play to the wide area and can we get a cross in? It might be, can we play through midfield? It might be, can we link up play with our superstar player, which might be our number 9, our striker? Or it might be a player that maybe some people might not pass to sometimes, so make them the superstar player, but making sure we rotate the superstar player. And then each time they link up with the superstar player, that could be 1 point, 2 points, 5 points, whatever. The players can keep the score, so you don't need to worry about that, because then there's a hidden curriculum of teaching them times table and maths all at the same time. But actually what they're doing is playing football. So break out into smaller groups, all on the same topic. Utilize various conditions within your small-sided game.
With time running out, we'll move on to theme 3, looking at how we might build a game plan based on our session objectives. I guess the first thing to do is define what success means to you on a match day. So if you're working 3-point football, then perhaps it is defined as bluntly as winning or losing. But for most of you on the call, we can go beyond the result in terms of looking at success. And linking match day into training allows you to frame success in different ways. So linked to what we've spoken about already on this webinar, what do you want to see your team do in a match day? How do you want to play? What does it look like for the whole team? And what does it look like for individuals? And then how might you measure and celebrate that on match day when you do see it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll speak about sort of the top end of the game is probably easy to identify. So player roles and responsibilities, knowing that if you're playing an attacking style of play, what you want from your fullbacks in respect of them getting forward and being able to get back. Midfield players, it might be look forward, think forward, play forward. So their mentality is when they get on the ball, there's one thing in mind to look forward, think forward, play forward. Attacking players may be movement, wide players may be dribbling to get the balls into the box. So as players understanding a clear role and responsibility within your framework of going to attack. I use that as an example.
Observe the first 15 minutes before any intervention It might be less than that because you might start seeing things that need to change. Again, 8 minutes into a game, you might be 1-0 down. Again, I'm talking top end, what needs to change and change fast, and how do you get that message onto the pitch? What are you seeing? What were the messages from training, and trying to stay on topic? Again, this is, age and stage. You will see loads of stuff. It's the most chaotic game in the world. So you're going to see loads of stuff. Can you stay on topic for continued learning for your players?
We might look in the physical corner at Isla, and she might be struggling agility, balance and coordination because she's very small for her age. So we know that at this present time, she's probably not ready for under 10s football. But what can we do to help and support her? So having those individual considerations and having that 4-corner mapping plan is really crucial.
All that's left for me to say is a huge thank you to Lisa, Danny, and to Warren for their time and expertise tonight. We really appreciate it. You've brought to life those ideas brilliantly. We hope that you have a very good festive season, no matter how you're celebrating, and we'll hopefully see you in the new year on another webinar. Thanks, guys.